This is Gabriela on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. We have a real treat for you just around the corner, and that is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Jeff is the owner of Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and he will be coming to you weekly to teach you more about empowered living. Now, let's join Jeff already in the studio.
Hello and welcome. This is Jeff Byrd with Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and this is Empowered Living. Now, as we are getting ready to enter the month of December tomorrow, and with it the many holidays and Christmas and this wonderful season for many of us, I was asked recently to speak to a group on the topic of joy. We sing Joy to the World sometimes, and we all hope that this season and the time with family that it brings is a time of joy. And to be perfectly honest with you, I had never thought a whole lot about joy. I had passed it by casually from time to time, but as this opportunity came up, I've started digging deeper into joy and found that more than just being a surface kind of happy emotion, joy is a profound emotion, a profound depth that touches our core, and that I am becoming convinced is what we are made for. We are made for joy. And C.S. Lewis said years ago that joy is the language of heaven. Everything that happens there, everything is filled and communicated in joy. And the dictionary gives the definition of joy as to experience great pleasure or happiness. And I think that's true on a very profound and deep level. I came across a verse in Psalm 30, verse 5 that says, "Weeping may last for the night, but a shout of joy comes in the morning." This is no passive, just weak or kind of shallow thing. It's not just a casual passing happiness. It's a shout of joy. This is something that impacts us so profoundly that it's best expressed in shouting, because we're so deeply touched, deeply moved, deeply happy. And the word joy in Hebrew is the word rina, and it means singing, shouting, gladness, triumph, rejoicing. This is a very, very active word, active response to something that has impacted us on a very profound and heartfelt level. So what I'd like to do today is to think with you about the experience of joy, and what are some of the things that produce joy? How does joy work? What happens inside of us to produce this response? Because this isn't something you can really feign or fake very well. You know, the fake it till you make it doesn't really work here. If you're down and you're not in a joyful place, it's hard to produce this intensity of emotion outwardly. It's something that really has to be produced at a deep level and then be expressed outwardly. So the first thing that I'd like to share with you on experiencing joy is it often happens when we encounter something far greater than our minds previously conceived. In other words, the mental view of things that we had was far less than the amazing reality of what is. And when we're brought face to face with that reality that far surpasses the confines of our previous mental construct, joy is produced. Now, for example, let me give you a couple of illustrations from the honeymoon that my wife and I had out in California a couple of years ago. And one of the things we did was we visited the redwood trees up at Henry Cowell State Park. And if you've ever been to the sequoias or to the redwoods, you know that is quite an experience. Because previously in our mind, we have an idea of what a tree is. Tree, oak tree, 50 feet, 60 feet, maybe 80 feet tall. When we think tree, we don't think redwood and sequoia 300 feet tall. Massive trunks, trunks as wide as some houses are. We don't think of that. So to drive up into that woods and you're just looking for the first tree, and we didn't see it when we got to the parking lot. We parked and we started hiking, and I thought it wasn't going to be very impressive. I thought, oh, these are just going to be some little redwoods. And then we turned a corner and bam, here are these massive, incredible, beautiful trees, thousands of years old and hundreds of feet tall. And you're just looking up going, oh my gosh, my definition, my mental construct of tree just totally changed. And with it, just a joy you just want to express. And you just kept saying it over and over. Oh my gosh, this is so amazing. This is so beautiful. This is so wonderful. It's just so far beyond what we had imagined. That's an encounter of joy. And another one happened on our honeymoon too. And it was the first day. And or if you're a surfer or if you've been out to Half Moon Bay in California, you may be familiar with the area called Mavericks. The construct of the ocean floor causes there to be some huge waves that come through at different seasons. And we wanted to see this area. So we went out to Mavericks and we went down low on the beach the evening that we got there. It was getting near dark and we didn't have much time. But the next morning we decided we wanted to go up high, up on the sea cliffs and look down. So we got there, and when we got there it was still dark. And so we walked out and with flashlights into this heather on these sea cliffs, just looking down and just waiting. And as the sun began to rise over to our side, colors started to emerge, the blues and the pinks and of this scene that just spread out before us, these huge, massive sea cliffs going as far as we could see off into the distance on the one side and curving around this area of Mavericks and these long breakers rolling in and the colors emerging. And it was so much bigger than what I had conceived it would be in my mind. To actually be there in the midst of it was to feel rather small, but at the same time created for this experience of massiveness and beauty. So that's the first thing. Both the Mavericks experience and the Redwood experience both put us face to face with something that was far bigger than what we had pictured on the inside. And isn't that what brings joy when we come to something that's far better, far bigger, far more beautiful than what we were believing for, than what we were thinking could be, than what we had constructed in our small worldview, and something came along and blew that small thinking, that small living, that small worldview open and introduced us to a huge and bigger and brighter and more beautiful reality. That's why I think Lewis said that joy is the language of heaven. We're just constantly being introduced to something that's far more magnificent and amazing and profound and loving than we could ever have imagined. And so joy is just the constant response to it. And number two, I believe that joy is produced not only from seeing something much bigger than what we had imagined, but also being touched very deeply and called to by beauty and by that which is larger than we are. I was looking through some photos the other day. I was looking for some royalty-free photos that I could use in a PowerPoint that I was putting together, and looking at some videos with my wife and some travel videos at the same time to get some inspiration. And it came across a scene of vineyards over in France on a cloudy day. And I think it was in Bordeaux region, and the rain was just falling over the vineyards. And I've been to some vineyards in France, and I love rainy days, and seeing those two things together just called to something in me. It was bigger than the rain. It was bigger than the vineyard. But something in that together just represented something so deep, so beautiful that I was just in tears watching it, because it called me to something so like it's hard to even put into words, but a beauty and a loveliness that's out there that's beyond what we normally experience on a daily basis. Another way this might happen is listening to music in a foreign language. Many of you may remember the scene in Shawshank Redemption where the main character goes and locks himself in the prison director's office and puts on an opera record and starts playing this opera record. And it's this beautiful aria that's playing. And Morgan Freeman is narrating, and he says, I don't know what that woman was saying. None of us did. But I'd like to think that it was something so beautiful that it can't be put into words. And often just, I think that's part of the fun of listening to people speak in another language that we don't understand is it just seems like maybe they're talking about something just so wonderful that's beyond the daily grind of things that we talk about in the language we do understand. Maybe they're on a different wavelength. Maybe they're coming from a different place and a different beautiful vision. And sometimes the music, certainly in some of the beautiful operatic works and others seem that way. Now, here's one that touched me very deeply a number of years ago. I'm not exactly sure why, but I related with it the minute I saw it. It's probably been nearly pushing 30 years ago now. And this was from a book by C.S. Lewis called Surprised by Joy. And he recounts an instance where he was flipping through some books, and this is what he says. Like a voice from far more distant regions, there came a moment when I idly turned the pages of the book and found the unrhymed translation of Tegner's Drapa and read, I heard a voice that cried, Balder the Beautiful is dead, is dead. I knew nothing about Balder, but was instantly uplifted into huge regions of northern sky. I desired with almost sickeningly intensity something never to be described, except that it is cold, spacious, severe, pale, and remote. And then, as in other examples, found myself already falling out of that desire and wishing I were back in it. Here's a situation where just a simple phrase that he didn't even understand what it meant. I heard a voice that cried, Balder the Beautiful is dead, is dead. He read that phrase in a book and knew nothing about what it meant, but something in it, something far bigger than his conscious understanding, called to him and drew him into this beautiful space of this vast northern sky and the feeling of being there. But then almost as soon as he was there, he felt himself slipping out of it and wishing he were back there again. So joy, I believe, is often those moments. It's like the opening of a door into a darkened room where a brief ray of light shines in from beyond, from the heavenly realm, from the greater realms than what we experience in the physical and the natural here on earth. And it's those rays of light that touch us, and almost as soon as they do, they fleet away very often. But they leave us instantly wanting more, to be back in there. And it just tells me that we're made for more than what we're often experiencing in this life. We are made for joy. We are made for those endless realms. The first, what I consider spiritual awakening that I ever had, I was 18 or 19 years old. And at that time, I was not doing well. I was, just felt very broken in a lot of ways. Didn't trust many people at all, be it church or family or school, and, was just trying to escape in every way possible. But there was something inside that longing that just kept calling. And as I was driving over a bridge, for those of you who live in this area, the Hampton Boulevard Bridge, I was driving over the Hampton Boulevard Bridge on my way to the local university, Old Dominion. And as I was driving over that bridge, it was raining. And on the radio station I was listening to, they were playing a song by The Who called Love Reign O'er Me. And that song says, only love can bring the rain that falls like tears from on high. And as I was driving across the bridge, the windshield wipers were going, the rain was falling, my tears were falling. I was looking out across the river that the bridge spans and felt as though I could see every raindrop that was coming down, hitting the water and leaving just beautiful, intricate pattern of concentric circles on the water. And I knew that they were absolutely right in that song, that only love can bring the rain that falls like tears from on high. And I knew that there was something greater. I knew that there was something not that I was even calling for. In those days, I was trying to run more than I was trying to find, but something that was calling me. There was a love that was greater. There was, like the tears that fall from on high, something big enough of heaven that it was going to come and touch me here on earth. And that was what I consider, that was a wake up. That was the very first spiritual wake up that I had, that there was something greater calling me and drawing me up into it. Next, and this is third, another experience of joy is belonging, the sense of belonging, being chosen for a team, being like the old Cheers theme song said, being where everybody knows your name. But not only just having them know your name, having them actually know you and accept you for who you are. So many people feel, as has been said, well, yeah, if you really knew me, you wouldn't love me. But to really be known and to be loved,